John, good morning there in New York. We're all looking forward to the Tel Aviv concert. Will this be your first time in Israel?
It will be. I'm very excited. I really have always said that I wanted to come to Israel, and now finally it's coming to fruition.
Do you have anything special planned for us here?
Well, anyone who knows me and my band know that it doesn't have to have a plan. It's a catalog of music that is deep, and I get that reaction from the audience. There's a lot of things to pull from, and we've been known to be a pretty good live band, so I think that's what we rely on, our hits.
You were like 20 when you wrote Runaway. That wasn't your first song, but you really believed in that one, right?
That's correct.
On the streets where you live, girls talk about the social lives.
But none of the record labels at the time were interested in it.
In retrospect, you'd go, no wonder nobody responded. But it was an unsolicited tape. I didn't have representation. I didn't even have a band. Having an original band at that time in my life, there was no money for it. So with Runaway, which I believed was a hit, I went to a radio station. Fortunately for me, the station was so new that it didn't even have a receptionist. And the DJ was in his booth, and I tapped on the window, and he was on the air, and he did like this to me, and he said, wait, you know, and he came out after the end of the record, went back on at the end of his break, and we talked. And I told him my story, and he said, wait till I'm done with the shift, and I did, and then I played him the song. He said, that's a hit song. And it started getting airplay in New York, which was just unheard of. To be on the radio in New York City was the lucky break I needed.
Back when you started the band, did you ever think that 30 years later you would still be so hugely successful?
I probably did. You know, that the ignorance of youth, it takes a lot of bravado to think that you're going to do this. It'd be easier to talk yourself out of this kind of a career trajectory than to actually follow through with it. You know, fortunately for me, I had youth on my side and not a lot of other choices. So I was able to fulfill that dream, and in retrospect, it worked out well. I'd always said this about our career. I grew up in public, and I wasn't ever going to be that guy that was, you know, wearing eyeliner and painting his fingernails black and writing bitch on his belly at 53 years old and pretending to be 18. So because I grew up in public, you as a man, I hope, grow. And in doing so, I got more and more involved in philanthropy, and ultimately realized that in the issues of homelessness and then hunger, these were issues, especially domestically, that not only did I understand, but I didn't need a scientist to find the cure. So when we started the foundation, again, that's not very cliche rock and roll. I didn't care. I knew that I could make a difference doing something with my money, with my time, and then, of course, with my celebrity. And we created the Soul Foundation. And I tell you, I'm very proud that of our accomplishments.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next President of the United States, Al Gore.
You're very political. You're friends with the Clintons, and you support Hillary. And you've been active since the year 2000 when you helped out Al Gore's campaign. Have you ever thought about entering political life yourself? Is that something that you might do someday?
I get much more done as a philanthropist than I could ever consider in politics. And it's not just Democrats. I mean, I'm Democratic, but I've become very good friends with the Republican governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie. And we may not agree on everything politically, because we certainly don't. But I can appreciate his viewpoints, and we talk at great length about him. The same way I've been fortunate enough to have had the opportunity to talk to President Clinton or Mrs. Clinton or Mr. Gore and some of the people I've met over the years. But politics as a whole, our American system is in need of a serious overhaul, and it's almost heartbreaking. It's a difficult time in the world, and politics is a system that really needs to be looked at from the inside out.
What is the band like since the departure of Richie Sambora? I mean, he was your songwriting partner for so many years.
Yeah, the dynamic's different, that's for sure. You know, in truth, people think that being in a rock band is a life sentence. And that's the way I try to put the fans at ease. Richie chose not to tour anymore. Anything that came out through the internet that were the misgivings, the untruths, I dare say the lies, that there was a fight, that it was about money, right hand to God, was not the truth. Show number 21, he just didn't show up. There was a show that night. Subsequently, 80 other shows, he chose not to show up. So we got the hint. He didn't want to do it anymore. And now he's saying it in the media that it was just that he's a single parent. It didn't thrill him. He couldn't keep up with the pace. And so he says, I'd rather walk away. And I understand. I'm not mad about it. But we are going to go on.
I want to ask you about ageism in rock and roll. I know from personal experience that 53 is not that old since we're exactly the same age, you know. But when you go on stage, do you sometimes think to yourself, one day I might be just too old for this?
Well, I have to tell you that 20 years ago, I used to hold Mick Jagger up at this place, and I held him in such high esteem. And 20 years ago, he was my benchmark to work very hard physically to be that showman. And then recently, as I was starting to ramp up, knowing I was going to do these shows and put this record out and I'm writing the next album, I was back at that house of mine and I was running up that same hill, and the Stones were playing that day, this year. And it's 20 years on. And I'm huffing and puffing going up that hill. And I said, until Mick Jagger lays down and calls it a day, I'm not going to be able to even think about it because he's got 20 years on me. And, you know, he's the bar. And until Keith Richards and Mick Jagger say that's enough, that's not, you know, that's not time to quit yet. And as long as I can still do it and hit the high notes, you know, then I'm going to do it.
Okay, so what is the secret to longevity in this line of work?
Be true to yourself. Be honest to God, true to yourself. Fads and fashions come and go. And sometimes they're going to be much more popular than what you're thinking. But in truth, if you're true to yourself, when they come and go, you'll remain.
John Bon Jovi in New York. Looking forward to seeing you here in Tel Aviv. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for this interview, John.
Thank you. Appreciate it.